Who are the Macrobians? Everyone's burning question. Everyone wants to know who they were. Well, first of all, I became aware of the Macrobians as a thing, I suppose, in a few years ago, as it was an inside joke among my friends, as there was a very short, couple paragraph long Wikipedia article about this people group called the Macrobians, and it was comically lacking in anything useful, anything of detail. So with this time, I've had to think, uh, lots of thinking and reflection, I suppose, with the quarantine and all. I decided to go back and look into this Macrobian question, and I've answered it. I suppose I've found some information, and this video will be me explaining the sources I found, the research I suppose I did on the Macrobians, and then I will share what I believe to be the proper interpretation per se of the Macrobians and who they were and such, and there'll be a reflection at the end. The only thing useful to come out of this, I suppose. So enjoy the Macrobian show, I suppose. Now, the first place I looked for information regarding the Macrobians was the Wikipedia article. I had mentioned this before. It is very short. It does not have a lot of information on it. It mentions Herodotus. It mentions Pliny the Elder, which we'll talk about later, as the two only really ancient Greek sources. And in the references, it has a bunch of books, no websites. There are two of the books have a Google Books link, and I checked into that. One of them is a Herodotus book, but it's not Herodotus's book. Translated, it's someone commenting on Herodotus's book, and the other is a similar story. So this wasn't really a great start. So I had to take a step back here. Now, the most important historian we'll be seeing is Herodotus. He was regarded as like the father of modern history per se. He was active around the 400 BCs, the Greco-Persian Wars, and he was the first one to mention the Macrobians, and it all kind of traces back to him in a roundabout way. And what's important to remember is Herodotus isn't always the most reliable of sources. He, for the most part, is mostly reliable, but there are lots of pieces that are exaggerated, and when you exit the Greco-Persian area, sphere, or what have you, it becomes more blurry. And that's where the Macrobians are, which starts the problem we will continue to say. Now, this was the second source I had come across after Wikipedia. It describes them all very briefly, and it says the Macrobians were in India. It mentions their long age, their height. The most interesting things I found in this was it mentions a crates of Pergamus, called them the Gymnetai. I'm not sure the pronunciation. It also mentions a tribe called the Serini, another long-living tribe apparently. And at the bottom it cites Pliny the Elder. Now, Pliny the Elder was an actual person, so I suppose that adds credit to this, but it's still very short and questionable. Here's a picture of Pliny the Elder for reference. He was a Roman writer, and it seems a bit odd to me that there would be people claiming the Macrobians were in India after, well after Herodotus, as most were kind of saying it was in Africa, or they were in Africa. So, interesting find, but again, we'll have to cast the net again, look at the next source we can find. So I decided to look into the term Gymnetai that was used in the second page, I suppose I found. And when you search it, it first off will autocorrect you to some other kind of drug or something of that sort. I'm not really looking into that, but when you correct it, you will find, first and foremost, you'll find things that link back to the Macrobians, and you'll also find a page about Pliny the Elder, which is, I suppose it adds credit to the other site. So I was looking into the links after searching Gymnetai, and the first one, the one that links back to the Macrobians, was in all caps, Macro Boy, spelled that way, not Macrobian. This was another relatively short page, and it again claims they were an Indian tribe. It mentions 2 other Indian tribes. It mentions the facts that the Macrobians were allegedly long-lived. And again, it cites this crates of Pergamenus, who, according to them, is a Greek writer in the 2nd century BE. It cites 2 other Greek historians as well. Another interesting find. I suppose we'll keep this in mind and look onward to the other links. Now this is relatively quick. I looked into one of the tribes that was mentioned in the last page, I suppose, and all that came up was a strange Korean site that's called museum.go.kr, which is a South Korean commercial website ending, and upon clicking it, it'll begin a download for something. I, of course, am not going to download this, but if anyone wants to, feel free. Now this was the second source I had found for the Gymnetai. It doesn't describe anything about the Macrobians here. It says the Gymnetai were some kind of Greek formation in armies around the time of Alexander, I suppose, and it does mention something about non-Greeks being able to serve, so maybe there's some pseudo connection here, because Alexander was in Egypt and India as well, so maybe the Macrobians were in the Gymnetai, but again, this just kind of muddles things more, so we'll take a step back again, I suppose. Now, I went back to the initial search of Macrobians at this point, and I had stumbled across this Somalian blog of all places, or not blog, forum is the word of all places, and on it I found an actual helpful post for once, and in it cites Pausanias, a Roman historian, and the whole forum was kind of talking about if the Somalis were the predecessors per se to the Macrobians, and it's all kind of, the site is very shady and it's all very questionable, but again, Pausanias is a real person, so this was a good lead per se. Now this is what the Somalian forum post links to. It isn't citing Pausanias, who was a Roman historian, but this isn't directly by him. It doesn't really add that much to this itself. It just places them in Africa, but and the relevance to the Somalians was that it was citing, or it was saying that the Somalis were likely not related to the Macrobians, so oh well, I suppose, for the Somalians. Now, here's some interesting thing I found. If you're looking up Pausanias, first you'll find the geographer, but second, Pausanias was a general in the Greco-Persian Wars that was described by Herodotus, and it's weird kind of connection to be made there, that Herodotus started this whole Macrobian thing, and now Pausanias is writing about them, and there's a person named Pausanias invented by, or described by, Herodotus. It's just very interesting how it connects in that way, I suppose. Now, the relevance of Pausanias to the Macrobians, which is what we care about here, is that he was writing in the 200 ADs, which is well after Herodotus and also well after Pliny the Elder or most other historians. So it kind of lets us know that the term Macrobian was still being used, if we were to believe him, in the 200 ADs, which is interesting. Now, here's the Wikipedia page for the general Pausanias, who again was described by Herodotus, and here's his picture here. Just a little snippet, I suppose. Now, looking into the crates or crades of Pergamenus, there were no pages on him. They all just linked back to other things, and none of them were actually about him. So I don't think he was real, or maybe I'm missing something here, but who knows? Now, from looking at all of this information and more that was more boring and not, I didn't feel the need to add it to this. This was more of a me going over the most interesting aspects of my findings, I suppose. But from looking at it all, kind of I subscribe to the idea that the Macrobians were a group of people that likely had a kingdom that again had conflicts with Persia, as the Herodotus states in his book. I don't place them in India. They were definitely in Africa. I see them more in the Ethiopian sort of area. A lot of people want to put them in the Horn of Africa as Somalis, but it's more likely they were uh, related to the Kushites or the Ethiopians in a way. And well, that's about it. Yeah, the tallness and the long age thing, they were likely some rumors or something about this that Herodotus had heard about in Persia, so I think that's where this is originating from. But yeah, they were probably a real group, but again, it's always very muddy, and this is mostly speculative, so who knows, really. Now, looking into all of this, I wouldn't describe the experience as fun. It was more of. It was a lot more. The most enjoyable aspect of it was just looking at the strange sources and all the things related to the topic, and the topic itself was kind of not very interesting because there was nothing about it. Um, this is one of the more uh, maybe negative aspects of this I found was Somalian nationalists and other groups trying to claim the Macrobians were their predecessors or ancestors in a way, which I suppose is kind of telling of how little recorded African history there is, especially in East Africa, because um, they're taking this one very obscure group that has been described by I mean it existed, but like they mostly focus on Herodotus's accounts of them being like strong and stuff and like tall and long living, and they're using that to kind of make themselves seem better. I suppose is the best term for it. Um, but yeah, it's strange to try and cite that, but I mean, I guess if that's all there is to cite, their only really group that was they could have claimed was there, but again, I don't think it was there. It's also, I suppose, all of this was telling of how there are some topics that are there's very little information on in the internet. You would expect that most things would be widely documented at this point, and most people have the interpretation that everything is on the web, like everything we know is on the internet. But it isn't. There's a lot of things that haven't been translated that no one really cares about to translate, and there's a lot of things that we just don't know yet, especially about the ancient world, because you know, that was some fucking years ago. So that about wraps it up. Uh, I don't know if I'll do this again. I don't see myself doing it again. It wasn't very fun to do. I think next time if I did do this, I'd probably actively, like, I'd record myself as I found the sources instead of having to kind of redo it in a way. I wasn't trying to make it look like I redid it, but that's kind of the way it was formatted, I suppose. Well, I mean, that's about it. So. Also, I went back to the Somalian form, and I got a 504, and I couldn't go to the website. This is the day after I did the research at night, and then the next day I was recording this, and I went back, and it was 504, and I'm not sure why, but it's just an interesting tidbit. Also, uh, I don't really like the way the wording I use a lot in this video. Like, it seems grandiloquent in a way. I don't know. I just wanted to comment on that. But yeah, this was a pain in the ass to make. It was there was a lot more work that was put into this than it looks like there was. But well, that's it. I suppose I'll see you all later.